They spent the next several hours cataloging the chamber. Every discovery was more amazing than the discovery on Vareth Prime had changed everything. News spread through the galaxy that the precursors hadn't just left a few ruins. They had left a complete archive of their civilization. But accessing it required more than just speaking Korean. It required understanding it at a deep cultural level. Dr. Minji Bei stood in front of what they were now calling the Great Vault. It was 3 times the size of the first chamber they had opened, buried deep beneath Vareth Prime's largest mountain range. The entrance was covered in Korean inscriptions so complex that even native speakers needed time to parse them. "This is different from the others," she said, adjusting her xenotechnology scanner. The other vaults responded to simple commands. This one wants something more. Beside her, linguist Jae Sung-yoon studied the inscriptions with intense focus. It's ceremonial language. Very formal, very old style. This isn't everyday speech. This is the kind of Korean that would be used in royal courts in sacred ceremonies. "Can you read it?" Colonel Tae-yang asked. He had been assigned to protect the excavation team, and he didn't like standing in front of unknown precursor technology without knowing what it might do. "I can read it," Jae-sung said, "but reading it and speaking it properly are different things. This passage needs to be delivered with the right emotional weight, the right respect, the right understanding of what's being asked." Dr. Hyun-woo arrived, slightly out of breath from climbing down the excavation tunnel. "Sorry I'm late. The council wanted an update on our progress." "Perfect timing," Minji said. "We need someone to attempt opening this vault, and you're the one who successfully opened the last one." Hyun-woo joined Jae-sung in front of the inscriptions. Together, they worked through the text, discussing nuances of meaning, debating proper pronunciation, considering the emotional context required. "It's not just asking permission to enter," Hyun-woo explained to the others. "It's asking us to prove we understand why this knowledge should be shared. We need to speak about responsibility, about wisdom, about the weight of carrying forward the legacy of an entire civilization." "That's a lot of pressure for a door code," Tae-yang muttered. "It's not a code," Jae-sung said. "It's a pledge, a promise that we'll use what's inside wisely." "Can you make that promise?" Minji asked quietly. Hyun-woo looked at her, then at the massive vault entrance. "I can speak the words. Whether humanity can keep the promise, that's up to all of us." He stepped forward, placed both hands on the entrance panel, and began to speak. The Korean that came from his mouth was beautiful, formal, weighted with centuries of linguistic tradition. He spoke about his ancestors, about the teachers who had passed down knowledge through generations, about the responsibility of those who carry wisdom forward into uncertain futures. He spoke about respect for the past and hope for the future. He spoke about humanity's mistakes and its aspirations. It wasn't just a recitation. It was a meditation, a prayer, a promise all at once. When he finished, the entire mountain seemed to hold its breath. Then, slowly, the vault began to open. The entrance was massive, easily 50 meters tall. As it swung inward, light spilled out from within. Not the blue light of the smaller chambers, but a warm golden glow that seemed almost alive. "By all the stars," Minji whispered. They entered carefully. The interior was beyond anything they had imagined. The vault stretched so far back that they couldn't see the end of it. Instead of individual data storage devices, entire walls were covered in what looked like living crystal formations, each one pulsing with stored information. "This isn't just a library," Jae-sung said, his voice echoing in the vast space. "This is their entire history. Everything they ever learned." In the center of the vault stood a platform with a single pedestal. On it rested what looked like a book, though it was made of the same crystalline material as the walls. Hyun-woo approached it cautiously. Korean text appeared on its surface, shifting and flowing like water. "It's an index," he said, reading quickly. "A guide to everything in the vault. Medical knowledge, engineering, physics, biology, philosophy, art, history. It's all organized by category. How do we access it?" Minji asked, her scanner already working to analyze the crystal formations. "We ask," Hyun-woo said simply. He spoke to the book in Korean, requesting information about the precursor's medical technology. The book responded. Text flowed across its surface, and several of the crystal walls began to glow brighter. A holographic display appeared, showing complex medical diagrams and explanations. "It's showing us how their healing technology works," Minji said, her eyes wide. This is decades beyond our current capabilities. Maybe centuries. Try asking for something else, Taeyang suggested. Hyunwoo requested information about the precursor's energy systems. Again, the book responded, and different crystal walls lit up. The hologram changed to show power generation systems that seemed to pull energy directly from the quantum foam of space itself. This is incredible, Jae-sung breathed. Every question we ask, it answers. As long as we ask in Korean. They spent hours exploring, asking questions, learning. Each answer led to more questions. The precursors had been master builders, incredible scientists, profound philosophers. Their knowledge was vast and detailed. But it was Minji who noticed something strange. Look at how the information is organized, she said, pointing at the crystal patterns. It's not just categorized by subject. There's an underlying structure. A progression. What do you mean? Hyunwoo asked. The medical information starts with basic concepts and builds up to complex ones. Same with the engineering, the physics, everything. It's like, she paused, thinking. It's like a curriculum. They're not just giving us information. They're teaching us. Jae-sung tested her theory by asking increasingly complex questions about precursor energy systems. The book only answered questions about advanced topics after they had accessed the foundational information first. It's a safeguard, he realized. They don't want us to grab their most powerful technology without understanding the basics first. We have to learn properly, step by step. Smart, Taeyang said. Give a child a loaded gun and someone gets hurt. But teach them properly, help them understand the responsibility, and eventually they're ready for it. That's exactly what they're doing, Hyunwoo agreed. They knew that whoever found this vault would have the cognitive and cultural sophistication to speak Korean. But speaking a language doesn't automatically make you wise. So they built in a teaching structure. We can't skip ahead. We have to learn at the pace they set. A new hologram appeared, showing the precursor elder from before. She spoke in Korean, and Hyunwoo translated for the others. If you are seeing this, you have entered our greatest vault. Here we have placed not just our knowledge, but our wisdom. Take it slowly. Learn carefully. Each piece of information builds on what came before. Do not rush. Do not grasp for power without understanding. We made that mistake once, and it cost us everything. The hologram showed images of precursor cities, beautiful and advanced. Then it showed those same cities falling into chaos as the plague spread. We became so focused on what we could do that we forgot to ask if we should do it, the elder continued. We created biological enhancements thinking we were improving ourselves. We didn't realize we were creating the very plague that would destroy us. Learn from our failure. Wisdom is not just knowing. Wisdom is understanding when to act and when to pause. The hologram faded, but new text appeared on the book. Hyunwoo read it aloud. This vault will only release information as fast as you can properly integrate it into your society. Each time you access knowledge, you must wait one cycle of your home planet before accessing more. Use that time to understand what you have learned. Use it to apply the knowledge wisely. Use it to prepare yourselves for the next lesson. They're pacing us, Minji said. We can't just download everything at once. Would we even want to? Jae-sung asked. Imagine if we suddenly had access to technology 1,000 years ahead of our current level. The social disruption alone would be catastrophic. The precursors thought of that, Hyunwoo said. They're not just giving us technology. They're teaching us to be ready for it. Colonel Taeyang walked around the pedestal studying the vault from every angle. This changes the power dynamic in the galaxy. Humans aren't just translators anymore. We're students in a school that only we can attend. Not only us, Hyunwoo corrected. Any species that learns Korean can access this. It will take them years, maybe decades, to learn it properly. But it's possible. Will we teach them? Minji asked. The council already agreed to that, Hyunwoo said. Humans teach Korean to anyone who wants to learn. In return, all discoveries are shared equally. But it's not equal, Taeyang pointed out. We can learn this knowledge faster because Korean is our native language. Other species will be playing catch-up for generations. Maybe that's okay, Jae-sung said thoughtfully. Maybe the precursors intended for there to be a gatekeeper species. Someone who can access the knowledge first and help guide how it's shared, as long as we do it responsibly. Another hologram appeared, this one showing various alien species. Some looked familiar, early versions of species currently in the Galactic Council. Others were completely. 6 months had passed since Subin's demonstration, and the galaxy was still trying to understand what it meant. Dr. Hyunwoo Kim stood in a genetics lab on Research Station Kepler, watching as Dr. Young Hee Nam analyzed the latest test results. Nothing, Young Hee said, shaking her head in frustration. I've compared human DNA to every known precursor genetic sample we have. There's no connection, not even a distant one. So we didn't descend from them, Hyunwoo said. Not unless the precursors somehow completely rewrote our entire genetic code and removed every trace of themselves in the process, which would be… She paused, searching for the right word. Pointless. Why would they do that? Jinho Kang, the xenoarchaeologist, entered the lab carrying a data tablet. He looked exhausted. I just got back from Verith Prime. We've finished the carbon dating on 3 more precursor sites. And? Hyunwoo asked. 3.7 million years, give or take 50,000. Same as all the others. Jinho collapsed into a chair. We've now tested 17 different precursor sites across 9 star systems. They're all the same age, and they all use the same language, which means the precursors had a widespread civilization millions of years before humans existed, Young Hee said, before Earth even had complex life forms. The 3 scientists sat in silence, contemplating the impossible timeline. Korean as a language was only a few thousand years old. The modern form that Subin had spoken was even younger. Yet here was a civilization millions of years gone, speaking something identical. There has to be an explanation, Hyunwoo said. The universe doesn't just create coincidences this big. Maybe it does, Jinho said darkly. Maybe we're looking at something we're not supposed to understand. That's not scientific, Young Hee protested. Neither is this situation. Hyunwoo's communicator beeped. It was Ambassador Daejung. Dr. Kim, we need you at the council chambers immediately. Jinho and Young Hee too, if they're with you. What's happened? They found something on Verith Prime, something big. Get here as fast as you can. 20 minutes later, the 3 scientists rushed into a packed briefing room. Scholar Reintak stood at the front, and despite his alien features, he looked excited. Thank you for coming, Reintak said. 3 hours ago, our excavation team on Verith Prime discovered a sealed structure. Not a vault exactly. More like a… He paused, searching for the right comparison. A message center. And it will only respond to the precursor language. He displayed a hologram of a massive building, still half buried in Verith Prime's red soil. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly. We've tried everything, Reintak continued. Scanning, drilling, cutting. Nothing works. But there's an entrance panel with a clear inscription. It's a passage that needs to be spoken aloud. With perfect pronunciation. You need a human to open it, Jinho said. Yes, but more than that. Reintak zoomed in on the inscription. This isn't simple text. It's ceremonial Korean, the kind used in formal situations with specific honorific levels and emotional context. A computer could pronounce the words, but it wouldn't have the cultural understanding behind them. Hyunwoo studied the inscription carefully. His eyes widened. This is a blessing. An old-style blessing asking for wisdom and respect from those who would enter. Can you speak it? Daejung asked. Yes, but I need to do it in person. With the right tone, the right feeling. This isn't just about making sounds. It's about showing that we understand what we're asking for. 2 days later, Hyunwoo stood on the surface of Verith Prime, staring at the massive precursor structure. The excavation team had cleared away most of the soil, revealing smooth walls covered in glowing Korean characters. Behind him, Young Hee, Jinho, and a dozen other scientists waited nervously. Colonel Tae Yang-oh, head of the human security team, stood beside Hyunwoo. Are you sure about this? We don't know what's inside. I'm sure, Hyunwoo said. This is why we're here. He approached the entrance panel and placed his hand on it. The symbols glowed brighter in response. Taking a deep breath, Hyunwoo began to speak in Korean. The words were formal and respectful, asking permission to enter, promising to treat the knowledge inside with wisdom and care. Hyunwoo spoke from his heart, thinking about his ancestors, about the weight of cultural tradition, about the responsibility of carrying forward knowledge from the past. When he finished, nothing happened for several seconds. Then the ground began to shake, everyone back. Taeyang shouted. The entrance slowly opened, revealing a corridor that sloped downward into darkness. Lights flickered on automatically, casting a soft blue glow. It worked, Young Hee whispered. It actually worked. They entered carefully, a full exploration team equipped with scanners and recording equipment. The corridor led to a vast circular chamber. At its center stood a pedestal holding what looked like a data storage device. Jinho approached it cautiously. His scanner showed no traps, no defensive systems, just information waiting to be accessed. "There's something written on the pedestal," he said. Hyunwoo came closer and read the Korean inscription. It says, "For those who can speak with wisdom, we leave our story. For those who can speak with respect, we leave our knowledge. For those who can speak with hope, we leave our future." "Poetic," Young-hee said. "But what does it mean?" "I think we're about to find out," Hyunwoo replied. He reached for the data device. The moment his fingers touched it, the chamber came alive. Holographic displays surrounded them, showing images of the precursors themselves. They were tall, slender beings with forearms and large, expressive eyes. Their civilization had been magnificent, their cities beautiful beyond description. But the holograms also showed their downfall. A plague, something biological that their advanced medicine couldn't stop. They had tried everything, but in the end they knew they were dying. Then one hologram showed a group of precursor scholars working frantically. They were analyzing thousands of different species across the galaxy, studying their evolution, their development, their languages. They were looking for something, Jinho said. The hologram showed their discovery. Certain vocal patterns, certain cognitive developments, certain ways of structuring language that indicated a species had the right kind of intelligence, the right kind of cultural sophistication. They were designing a test, Hyunwoo realized, a language that would only emerge in species that had developed specific traits. The next hologram confirmed it. The precursors had created their language intentionally, based on patterns they found in dozens of developing species. They made it complex enough that only beings with advanced cognition could speak it, but natural enough that it would eventually evolve somewhere. They didn't predict Korean specifically, Young-hee said, watching the hologram. They created a linguistic pattern, a template, and somehow, somewhere, that pattern would emerge naturally in a species that had the right cognitive and physical traits. Korean happened to fit that pattern, Hyunwoo added. Our ancestors developed these sounds, these grammatical structures completely independently. But by pure chance, or maybe not chance, they matched what the precursors designed. The final hologram showed a precursor elder speaking directly to the camera. Scholar Rin-tuk's translator worked overtime to convert the ancient Korean into other languages. "We are the last," the elder said. "Our civilization ends, but our knowledge need not. We have built these vaults throughout the galaxy. We have filled them with everything we learned, everything we created, everything we understood. But we will not leave this knowledge unguarded." The elder gestured and images of various species appeared. Some were primitive, still discovering fire. Others were more advanced but not yet spacefaring. "We have studied the developing species of this galaxy," the elder continued. "We have learned that true wisdom comes not from technology or physical strength, but from cognitive flexibility, cultural complexity, and the ability to communicate with nuance and respect. These qualities show themselves in language, so we have made our language a key, not a lock to keep others out, but a key that will only fit species who have developed the right qualities. If you can speak this language, if you can understand its subtleties, its levels of respect, its emotional depth, then you have proven you are ready for what we leave behind." The hologram of the elder smiled sadly. "Use our knowledge well. Build upon it. Learn from our mistakes, and perhaps, someday, you will leave behind your own gift for those who come after you." The hologram faded, leaving the team standing in the quiet chamber. "They knew," Young-hee said softly. "They knew they were dying, and they turned their language into a legacy." Jinho was already scanning the rest of the chamber. "There are more data storage devices here. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. What's on them?" Tae-yang asked. Jinho checked his scanner. "Everything. Scientific data, historical records, philosophical texts, engineering specifications. It's all here, all labeled in Korean." Hyunwoo found another inscription on the wall. It says the instructions are meant to be spoken aloud. Each device needs a verbal command to activate it. They really wanted to make sure only the right species could access this. "Smart," Young-hee said. "Any species could eventually crack a mechanical lock or a computer code. But language, true language with all its cultural depth, that's harder to fake." His compound eyes reflected the holographic light. "You have it. You have my complete support. I will." The council chamber had never been so crowded. Every seat was filled and dozens of delegates stood along the walls. News of the emergency session had spread through the station like wildfire. The impossible precursor language might not be impossible after all, and everyone wanted to witness what would happen next. Ambassador Dae-jung stood in the center of the chamber, feeling the weight of thousands of eyes upon him. Somewhere in the crowd, his daughter Subin sat with her teacher, Ms. Bo-ra-han. The 6-year-old girl wore her best dress and kept looking around at all the strange aliens with wide, curious eyes. Archon Velthar called the session to order. His crystalline voice rang through the chamber. Ambassador Park, you have made an extraordinary claim. You say that humans can speak the precursor language. Scholar Rintok has confirmed your preliminary demonstrations, but the Council requires proof that this is not a unique ability of trained linguists. We need to see that this language is truly natural for your species. I understand, Archon, Dae-jung replied. That's why I brought my daughter. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Bringing a child to the Council was almost unheard of. Your daughter is a linguist? Velthar asked, confused. No, Archon. She's 6 years old. She attends kindergarten on the human colony ship. The murmur became a roar of discussion. Several delegates protested immediately. How could a child demonstrate anything? This was a serious matter requiring serious expertise. Rintok raised one of his legs for attention. If I may, Archon, this is precisely the point the humans are making. If their claim is true, then even their children can speak the precursor language. It would prove that this ability is innate to their species, not something that requires decades of study. Velthar considered this. Very well. Let the child come forward. Ms. Bo-ra gently guided Subin down to the chamber floor. The little girl looked very small in the massive space, surrounded by aliens of every shape and size. Her hand clutched her teacher's tightly. Hello, Subin, Velthar said, his voice softening. Do you know why you're here? Subin nodded. Her voice was quiet but clear. Daddy said I need to read something. In Korean. Are you nervous? A little. There are so many people. Some of the delegates seemed charmed by the child's honesty. Others remained skeptical. A Thorian delegate spoke up, his 3-chambered voice box creating harmonic overtones. With respect, Archon, how do we know the child won't simply recite something she memorized? Children are very good at memorization. A fair point, Velthar agreed. He looked at Rintok. Scholar, you prepared a test? I did, Rintok said. He approached Subin carefully, trying not to frighten her with his alien appearance. Hello, young one. I'm going to show you some words. I want you to read them out loud, just like you do in school. Can you do that for me? Subin looked up at Ms. Bo-ra, who nodded encouragingly. You can do it, Subin. Remember, just read naturally. Don't worry about the audience. Rintok activated a small holographic display at Subin's eye level. The first text appeared, carefully selected to include all the impossible phonemes that the Council believed no species could produce. Subin frowned slightly. These are old words. We don't talk like this anymore. That's okay, Ms. Bo-ra said gently. Just read what you see. Okay. Subin took a breath and began to read. Her child's voice filled the chamber, speaking in Korean. The effect was electric. Delegates who had been skeptical fell silent. Subin read through the passage, occasionally stumbling over a word like any child reading unfamiliar text. But every single sound came out perfectly. The doubled consonants that computers couldn't reproduce, the tonal shifts that required impossible muscle control, the complex clusters that supposedly exceeded biological capabilities. Subin produced them all without even trying. She finished the passage and looked up at Rintok. Did I do good? The old scholar's mandibles trembled. His voice, when it came through the translator, was thick with emotion. You did perfectly, child. Rintok displayed another text, then another. Each one was designed to test different aspects of the precursor language. Subin read them all. Sometimes she asked Ms. Bo-ra what a word meant. Sometimes she giggled at the old-fashioned phrasing, but she never failed to produce the sounds correctly. The Council watched in stunned silence. Finally, Rintok displayed one last text. This was a passage from deep within the precursor archives, something he had found just that morning. He hadn't shown it to any of the humans beforehand. It was the ultimate test. This one is very hard, he warned Subin. Take your time. Subin studied the text carefully. Her lips moved silently as she practiced. Then she began to read aloud. The passage was long and complex, full of formal honorifics and ceremonial language. But Subin worked through it methodically, the way children do when reading something challenging. When she finished, she looked proud of herself. "That was really hard," she announced. "But I did it." The chamber erupted. Some delegates cheered, others argued frantically with their neighbors. A few sat in shocked silence, unable to process what they had just witnessed. An elderly Krill scholar in the upper gallery stood up. Her voice cracked as she spoke through her translator. "I have studied dead languages for 300 years. I have dedicated my life to understanding how ancient species communicated. I cannot speak this precursor language. I have tried for months and I cannot produce even the simplest sounds." Tears were running down her face. "And this human child, can speak it before she can tie her shoes." Ms. Bora knelt down beside Subin. "You did wonderfully. I'm very proud of you. Can we go home now?" Subin asked. "I'm hungry." Despite the tension in the room, several delegates laughed. The child's innocent question somehow broke the remaining ice. She had no idea she had just shaken the foundations of galactic society. Archon Velthar raised his hands for silence. "I believe we have our proof. The question now is not whether humans can speak the precursor language. The question is why and how." Ambassador Daejung stepped forward again. "With respect, Archon, I think there's a more immediate question. The precursor vaults contain knowledge that could benefit everyone. Technology, medicine, philosophy. But all of it requires proper pronunciation to access. Humans can provide that access." A Valen delegate stood up. "Are you suggesting that humans should control all precursor technology? That we should depend on your species for access to this knowledge?" "No," Daejung said firmly. "I'm suggesting we share it. Humans can read and speak the precursor texts. We can activate their technology, translate their documents, unlock their secrets. But we can't do it alone. We don't have the scientific expertise, the engineering knowledge, or the resources. We need to work together." "A pretty speech," a Thorian delegate called out. "But how do we know your species won't hoard this power?" Before Daejung could respond, Rintok spoke up. "Because they brought a child to demonstrate their ability. Not a soldier. Not a politician. A kindergarten student." He gestured at Subin, who was now sitting on the floor playing with a small toy her teacher had given her. They could have kept this secret. They could have used it to gain leverage in the council. Instead, they showed us the truth immediately. That speaks to their character. Another voice joined the discussion, then another. The debate raged for over an hour. Some delegates argued for restrictions on human access to precursor sites. Others wanted to establish joint research teams immediately. A few suggested that humans should be given special status in the council, while others feared this would create an imbalance of power. Through it all, Ambassador Daejung remained calm and patient. He answered every question, addressed every concern. Beside him, Dr. Yunwoo provided technical details about the language structure. Finally, Archon Velthar called for silence again. "We cannot resolve all these issues today, but I propose we establish the Precursor Language Initiative, a joint council program. Humans will teach their language to any species that wishes to learn. In return, all precursor discoveries will be shared equally among council members. Does anyone object?" The vote wasn't unanimous, but it was overwhelming. The motion passed. As delegates filed out of the chamber, many approached Ambassador Daejung to congratulate him or ask questions. Several wanted to meet Subin, who had become an instant celebrity. Scholar Rintok waited until the crowd thinned before approaching. "Ambassador, I want to thank you. You could have made us look foolish. Instead, you treated our ignorance with respect. Scholar, you're one of the greatest linguists in the galaxy," Daejung said. "The fact that you couldn't speak Korean doesn't make you foolish. It makes you someone who encountered a language your biology wasn't designed for. Just like I could never produce the harmonic frequencies of a Thorian or the crystalline tones of a Velan." "Perhaps," Rintok said. "But I want to learn. Will you teach me?" Daejung smiled. "It would be an honor." Ms. Bora approached with Subin, who was half asleep on her shoulder. "Ambassador, we should get her back to the ship. It's past her bedtime." "Of course." Daejung reached out and gently brushed his daughter's hair. "Thank you, Subin. You did something amazing today." The little girl yawned. "I just read some words, Daddy." "I know, sweetheart. Just some words." As they left the chamber, the human embassy was buzzing with activity. Ambassador Daejung had called an emergency meeting. but he refused to tell anyone why. Now 3 of Earth's top experts sat in the private research lab, looking confused and slightly annoyed at being summoned so urgently. Dr. Jiwon Choi adjusted her glasses and checked her watch. Ambassador, I was in the middle of cataloging artifacts from the Centauri expedition. This better be important. It is, Daejung promised. He stood at the front of the room next to Hyunwoo, who looked nervous. Dr. Kim has made a discovery. I'll let him explain. Also present was Dr. Sung-Min Lee, a phonetics specialist who had worked with the United Nations First Contact Team. He crossed his arms skeptically. If this is about the precursor language we already heard, Scholar Rintok gave his report. It's impossible for biological beings to speak. That's what we need to talk about, Hyunwoo said. He activated the holographic display and pulled up the precursor texts. I've analyzed the phonetic structures, the consonant clusters, the tonal variations, the grammatical patterns. And, Jiwon prompted. Hyunwoo took a deep breath. It's Korean. The precursor language is Korean. The room fell completely silent. Sungmin's arms dropped to his sides. Jiwon removed her glasses and cleaned them slowly, as if she couldn't trust what she was seeing. That's impossible, Sungmin finally said. Korean is maybe 5,000 years old. These texts are millions of years old. I know how it sounds, Hyunwoo said, but look at the evidence. He displayed the comparisons side by side. This character that Rintok said required impossible vocal gymnastics? It's Kiji. This tonal shift they can't reproduce. It's the difference between mal and mad. These consonant clusters, they're standard in Korean. Jiwon stood up and walked closer to the display. Her hands moved through the holographic symbols, examining each one carefully. Show me the grammar structure. Hyunwoo pulled up several sentence examples from the precursor texts. He pointed out the subject-object-verb order, the particle systems, the honorific levels built into the verb conjugations. It's not just similar, he said. It's identical. Every linguistic feature that makes Korean unique is present in this precursor language. The way particles attach to words, the 7 levels of formality, even the way questions are formed. Sungmin joined Jiwon at the display. He studied the phonetic breakdowns, his eyes growing wider with each passing moment. The aspiration patterns, he muttered. The way these sounds cluster together. I would need to test it, but... He trailed off, shaking his head in disbelief. Test it how? Daejung asked. I need to hear it spoken, Sungmin said. If Dr. Kim is right, then a native Korean speaker should be able to pronounce these words naturally. But if he's wrong, there will be subtle differences that make it impossible even for humans. I can speak it, Hyunwoo said confidently. Pick any text. Sungmin selected a particularly complex passage, one that Rintok had used as an example of the most difficult precursor writing. This one. The scholar said it would take 17 different muscle movements in perfect sequence. Hyunwoo looked at the text. He recognized it immediately as a formal greeting, something that might be used in a ceremonial context. He cleared his throat and spoke. The words flowed out naturally. To his Korean-speaking colleagues, it sounded like someone reading from an old historical document. Formal, respectful, but entirely pronounceable. Hyunwoo finished the passage and looked at Sungmin expectantly. The phonetic specialist's mouth hung open. That was perfect. Every sound, every tonal shift, every consonant cluster. You didn't even struggle? Because I learned these sounds when I was 4 years old, Hyunwoo said. We all did. Jiwon was frantically taking notes. The implications are staggering. Either the precursors somehow knew that Korean would develop on Earth, or... She paused, unable to finish the thought. Or it's a coincidence so unlikely that it shouldn't be possible. Daejung finished for her, which is why we need more proof before we bring this to the council. What kind of proof? Hyunwoo asked. We need to demonstrate that it's not just you, Daejung said. We need to show that any Korean speaker can do this. We need translations that make sense. And we need to be prepared for every argument the council will throw at us. For the next 6 hours they worked. Jiwon cross-referenced the precursor text with Korean historical documents, looking for grammatical patterns. Sungmin recorded Hyunwoo speaking various passages, analyzing each sound wave to confirm it matched the computer's reconstruction of how the precursor language should sound. Everything matched perfectly. I don't understand, Sungmin said, reviewing his data for the 3rd time. How is this possible? Did humans somehow descend from the precursors? No, Jiwon said firmly. Genetic analysis has proven that humans evolved on Earth, independently from any other known species. We have the fossil record to prove it. Then how do we explain this? Sung-min demanded. Nobody had an answer. By the time they finished their analysis, Ambassador Daijung had made a decision. We present this to the council tomorrow, but we need to be smart about it. Scholar Rintok has spent 40 years studying dead languages. We can't just tell him he's wrong. Then what do we do? Hyunwoo asked. We show him, Daejung said with a slight smile. We let the evidence speak for itself. The next day, a small group gathered in the council's private research chamber. Scholar Rintok had been invited personally by Ambassador Daejung, along with 3 other prominent xenolinguists. The Krill scholar looked tired and sad. The discovery of an impossible language clearly weighed on him. Thank you for coming, scholar, Daejung said respectfully. We have something to show you regarding the precursor language. Rintok's mandibles clicked softly. Ambassador, I appreciate your interest, but I have reviewed the data thoroughly. Unless you have discovered a way to genetically modify the human vocal tract, I'm afraid there is nothing more to discuss. Actually, Hyunwoo said, stepping forward, we don't need genetic modification. He activated the display and pulled up one of the texts that Rintok had analyzed. Scholar, you said this passage was impossible to speak. May I try? Rintok looked at the other linguists, who seemed equally confused by the request. You may try, of course, but I must warn you the computer analysis was very clear. Even attempting these sounds incorrectly could damage your vocal cords. I understand the risk, Hyunwoo said. He looked at the text, took a breath, and began to speak in Korean. The effect was immediate. Rintok's entire body went rigid. The other linguists leaned forward in shock. The translator devices struggled for a moment, then began converting the Korean into their respective languages. Those who come after us, remember this truth. Knowledge without wisdom is a ship without a sail. We leave you our words, our works, our warnings. Speak them with care, for language carries the weight of civilizations. When Hyunwoo finished, the silence in the room was absolute. Rintok's voice, when he finally spoke, was barely a whisper. How is this possible? Because the precursor language isn't alien to us, Ji-won explained gently. It's Korean, a language currently spoken by millions of humans on Earth. That cannot be, one of the other linguists protested. The timeline makes no sense. How could a language develop independently on Earth that perfectly matches a language spoken millions of years ago? We don't know, Sung-min admitted, but the evidence is undeniable. Every phoneme, every grammatical structure, every linguistic feature matches perfectly. Rintok approached the display slowly, his legs trembling slightly. He pulled up his own analysis, comparing it to what he had just heard. The tonal shifts, he muttered. The consonant clusters, they're all there. Perfect pronunciation. But how can a human child learn what I have studied for decades and cannot master? Because we teach it in kindergarten, Hyunwoo said quietly. By age 5, most Korean children can produce all these sounds naturally. It's part of our language development. The old scholar seemed to age before their eyes. He had dedicated his life to the study of dead languages, and now a young human was telling him that the greatest linguistic discovery in galactic history was something Earth children learned from picture books. Show me more, Rintok said finally. Show me everything. They spent the next several hours demonstrating. Hyunwoo read passage after passage. Ji-won explained the historical development of Hangul, the Korean writing system, and how it was scientifically designed to represent the shape of the mouth and tongue when making sounds. King Sejong created it in the 15th century, Ji-won explained. He wanted a writing system that anyone could learn regardless of their education. Each character visually represents how to position your mouth to make that sound. Rintok studied the Hangul characters floating in the hologram. Elegant, he whispered. Brilliant. And you say children learn this? Children learn this, Sung-min confirmed. The phonetic system makes it intuitive. One of the other linguists, a Valen named Kirshen, spoke up. If what you say is true, this changes everything. The precursors left knowledge throughout the galaxy, technology, history, philosophy, all locked behind a language barrier. But if humans can speak it, then we can unlock it, Daejung finished. But we need the council's approval to proceed. Rintok turned to face the ambassador. The council chamber fell silent as Scholar Rintok stepped forward. His 6 legs clicked against the polished floor, and his translator device hummed softly at his chest. Around the massive circular room, representatives from 47 different species watched with anticipation. Some had eyes, some had sensory organs humans couldn't even name, but all of them focused on the ancient Krill scholar. Dr. Hyunwoo Kim sat in the human delegation section, his fingers drumming quietly on his datapad. He had been assigned to the Galactic Archaeological Survey 3 months ago, fresh from Earth with his doctorate in linguistics. This was his first major council session, and he felt small among the gathered aliens who had studied dead languages for centuries. Honored delegates, Rintok began. His voice translated into hundreds of languages simultaneously. What we discovered on Verith Prime will change everything we know about galactic history. Ambassador Daejung Park leaned toward Hyunwoo and whispered, "Pay attention. This is why they called us here." Rintok activated a holographic display. Strange symbols floated in the air, beautiful and complex. They seemed to dance and shift, each character containing layers of meaning that made Hyunwoo's trained eye widen. "These texts are 3.7 million years old," Rintok continued. "They belong to the precursors, the civilization that came before all of us. For 2 centuries we have searched for their language. Now we have found it, and I must tell you the terrible truth." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "This language is impossible to speak." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Archon Velthar, the towering leader of the Valen species, raised one crystalline hand for silence. His voice resonated like bells. "Explain, scholar." "How can a language be impossible?" Rintok's mandibles clicked nervously. "The phonetic requirements are beyond any known species. Observe." He played an audio file, a computer-generated attempt at pronouncing one of the precursor words. The sound was harsh, full of stops and clusters that seemed to fight against each other. "This single word requires 17 distinct muscle movements in the vocal tract," Rintok explained. "It needs rapid tonal shifts, glottal stops that must happen in milliseconds, and consonant clusters that our vocal anatomy simply cannot produce. The Velen cannot make these sounds because their vocal crystals resonate too slowly. The Krill cannot because our mandibles lack the flexibility. The Thorians cannot because their 3-chambered voice boxes produce only harmonic frequencies." He displayed chart after chart, each one showing the physical limitations of different species. "I have spent 40 years studying dead languages. I have reconstructed speech patterns from species extinct for millennia. But this," he gestured at the symbols, "this would require us to completely redesign our biology. It could take centuries of genetic engineering. Perhaps it will always remain beyond our reach." Hyunwoo found himself leaning forward, squinting at the phonetic transcriptions floating in the hologram. Something about them felt familiar. He pulled up his own datapad and began comparing the symbols to his linguistic databases. Ambassador Daejung noticed his intense focus. "See something?" "Give me a moment," Hyunwoo whispered, his fingers flying across the screen. Rintok was still speaking. "The precursors left us a treasure trove of knowledge, but they locked it behind a language we cannot speak. Without proper pronunciation, we cannot activate their technology. Without understanding the tonal nuances, we cannot fully translate their meaning. We have found the greatest library in the galaxy, and we cannot read it aloud." The chamber erupted in discussion. Some delegates argued for genetic modification programs. Others suggested developing new technology to speak the words artificially. A Thorian representative proposed training specialists from birth, starting with the youngest generation. Hyunwoo's heart began to race. His hands trembled slightly as he cross-referenced another symbol. Then another. No, it couldn't be. It was too incredible. Too impossible. "We must face reality," Rintok concluded sadly. "The precursors were more advanced than us in every way, including their speech. What they considered normal communication is, for us, an unreachable dream. I recommend we focus our efforts on written translation only, and accept that the spoken language may remain forever silent." The voting began. One by one, species representatives agreed with Rintok's assessment. What else could they do? The evidence was clear. The language was impossible. Hyunwoo stood up suddenly. The movement was so abrupt that several nearby delegates turned to look at him. Ambassador Daejung grabbed his arm. "What are you doing?" "I need to check something," Hyunwoo said, his voice tight with barely controlled excitement. "I need to check this right now. The session isn't over. Ambassador, please. Trust me." Something in Hyunwoo's eyes made Daejung release his arm. Make it quick, and this better be important. Hyunwoo rushed out of the chamber, his datapad clutched to his chest. His mind was spinning. It couldn't be what he thought it was. The odds were astronomical. But the more he looked at the symbols, the more certain he became. He found a quiet corridor and pulled up his personal files. Years of study, research papers, childhood memories. He opened an old teaching document his mother had sent him. Something from his early education back in Seoul. His fingers shook as he compared it to the precursor texts. The match was perfect. The impossible consonant clusters weren't alien at all. They were GG, DD, BBS, JJ. The unreachable tonal shifts were standard honorific speech patterns. The complex phonetic requirements were things he had learned before he turned 6 years old. Oh my God, he whispered to the empty corridor. It's Korean. The precursor language is Korean. He stood there for several minutes trying to process the implications. An ancient language millions of years old spoken by a civilization that died before humanity even existed. And it was identical to a language currently spoken by 50 million people on Earth. It was impossible. It was insane. But the evidence was right there in his hands. Hyunwoo ran back to the chamber. The session was ending, delegates filing out in small groups discussing the tragic discovery. He pushed through the crowd until he found Ambassador Daejung talking with 2 other human representatives. Ambassador. Hyunwoo gasped, out of breath. Ambassador, I need to speak with you. Privately. Right now. Daejung saw the look on his face and excused himself from the conversation. He led Hyunwoo to a small conference room off the main chamber. What's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost. Better than a ghost, Hyunwoo said. He pulled up his datapad and showed Daejung the comparisons. The precursor language. The one they say is impossible to speak. Yes? It's not impossible. Hyunwoo's hands were still shaking. Ambassador, I can speak it. Right now. Every word scholar Rintok showed us I can pronounce perfectly. Daejung stared at him. That's not possible. You heard what he said. No species can. Humans can, Hyunwoo interrupted. Because it's not an alien language. It's Korean. The precursor language is Korean, Ambassador. I don't know how or why, but I'm looking at Hangul. I'm looking at Korean phonemes, Korean grammar structures, Korean tonal patterns. This isn't something we need to learn. This is something we teach in kindergarten. The silence that followed was deafening. Ambassador Daejung slowly sat down, his face pale. He looked at the datapad, then at Hyunwoo, then back at the datapad. You're absolutely certain? I've been studying linguistics my entire life, Hyunwoo said. I'm certain. Daejung stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the massive space station that housed the Galactic Council. Thousands of ships from hundreds of worlds all gathered here, all of them thinking the precursor language was impossible. If you're right, he said quietly, everything is about to change. I know. We need to be absolutely sure before we bring this to the Council. If we're wrong, we'll be humiliated. Earth's reputation would be destroyed. I understand. Daejung turned back to face him. Can you prove it? Can you demonstrate that you can actually speak this language? Hyunwoo smiled. For the first time since entering the conference room, he felt calm. He pulled up one of the precursor texts that Rintok had declared unpronounceable. He cleared his throat and began to read aloud in Korean. The words flowed easily from his mouth. Every consonant cluster, every tonal shift, every subtle sound that the computer had struggled to produce. It was as natural as breathing. When he finished, Daejung was staring at him with an expression of pure wonder. We need to call Earth, the ambassador said. We need to call them right now.